or job titles, we see data scientist obviously is there, and then we have MLEs, then full stack engineers, data engineers, and business analysts, data analysts, and then we have you, the AI/ML architect. So what I want to know is that what does this job title entails? For example, what do you think makes a good AI/ML architect?
That's a very good question, Wendy. Essentially, kind of, right off the bat. So yeah, it's a little bit challenging, right? It's just like last few weeks, right? General AI landscape, essentially, it's exploding, right? I mean, essentially put everyone in a, I mean, it's like wham ad right now, right? It's really hard. Basically, your mind is exploded, right? It's really hard to catch up. But happily, I was it's spring break last week. I was off the grid. When we all know that it's good or bad. Basically, yeah, it's good, right? Mental health, right? Trying to slow down a little bit. But when I came back yesterday, right, I tried to pick up everything. So kind of rehook up my brain, my mind to the grid. So recharging, right? So so now back to the question. Sorry, I'm distracted a little bit. So how to be a good AI architect? Yeah. So I'm a solution architect, right? I'm customer facing, right? So I mean, probably there are so many talks about how approach AI ML, right? Is a data focus. Very beginning, it's model focus, right? Then gradually there's a data focus, data centric, right? So eventually you probably have human centric AI, like something from a Stanford, right, AI lab.
Yeah.
So you see that trend, right? That theme shifting, right? So now as a solution architect, right, I'm customer facing. So every customer is different. So they have their unique organization structure, and they have their own unique business use cases, right? So that's why it's another reason why AI and especially not even to AI, right? So MLOps by itself is hard. So the challenge itself is every business use case is different, and it have its own unique requirement, right? Either functional requirement, non-functional, right? And actually, if you do a lot of projects that you find a non-functional requirement, that's basically people side, right? Organization side. It's basically it's more important sometimes than the functional requirement, to be honest. So that's why we always think, hey, technical is easy. So non-technical side is tough, right? Because you have to handle the business side, because every organization is called function, and how to define the gray area, things like that. So with that being said, so in order to be a good architect, but definitely you need to understand the business use case to your bottom of your heart, right? Really understand customer pain. So that's why I really call it, right? People are talking about user experience, right? So you need to understand the user, that's the final products, right? You deliver. But if you back that's the chain, right? Because the front end back, because shift the lead a little bit, right? So a lot of client we are working with basically is special, is stakeholder, right, of the projects, right? So basically it's data scientists, ML engineer, or even DevOps engineer, software engineers. So they are basically develop platform, right? It's a developer experience, right? How easy you want to make their life easy, right? So that's basically essentially our major focus, right? We help them to employ they basically either internal customer or their external customer, right? End user, regardless it's business use cases, external or external facing. So that's what we are helping. So as a solution architect, basically you're trying to employ those developer experience, make their job fun instead of a drudge work.
Yeah. And Xiaoze, I just, when you were saying that you help the customers and everybody has the unique business problem, and they kind of they're in need of very customized approach to their business, that how AI or analytics, to be very specific, can help them in this journey. Now, that this particular piece itself is very broad spectrum. There is an end-to-end ML workflow when we talk about. So what is your specific role? Is it towards helping the customer identify the use cases and onboarding them in this journey, or is it like end-to-end till the deployment?
So actually, my focus is the second one. So it's basically help them deploy the end-to-end solutions. So it's essentially more focused on MLOps, but right now we are extending to the LLM or FM ops, right? You know, that's so
Yeah.
large language model or foundation model ops, but it's interface is very natural extension, right? You probably hear that. So
Yeah.
now, yeah, our focus is really end-to-end ML ops solution, right? So you probably hear a lot of startups, ecosystem, and
Yes.
you know, those, you know, hyperscalers, right? AWS SageMaker, etc., etc. So for all, my focus is ML's solution, and you are exactly right. So basically, for rack space, right? Our offering here
Yeah.
is, we call it a model factory. So it's a factory, right? So with that
Mhm.
being said, so basically, you know, whoever you have, customer have their needs, our factory will customer design and implement the end-to-end solution. Basically, we call it kind of ML platform, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah, that's correct. And Shazi, when you somewhere mentioned that it's not just a gamut of technical skills, it's about non-technical skills as well. And I could really relate with that, because sometimes what happens is when you're just onboarding into the journey, it becomes overwhelming that there's so much data that the organizations are hoarding, and they just want to make use of that data asset. And in their attempt to do that, they get like there's a whole lot of ideas that are swarming, and they just want to just tap into that potential asset part. Now what I want to know is that onboarding is easy, deployment is difficult, and not everything that we start with as a POC goes till the production, right? So, and because you are already from the ML ops side of the project, what I want to know is that adoption is often the difficult part, where you need to convince the stakeholders why they should adopt the solution. You have done a lot of experiments, and maybe the POCs are looking very promising, they're very good, and then you go on designing the solution. But before we do that, there's this middle part where you need to be very sure of whether somebody's going to be using this or not. Is there a consumer of this solution in the market? How do you convince that?
Yeah, that's again, that's super, you know, that's essentially right. That's bread in the butter, right? The question. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why just, you know, Rackspace as company, right? Because it's public information, right? So we doing, you know, organization transformation, evolving, right? So only constant in life is changing, right? So
Yes.
adapts, right? So organization changing. So 2BU is public and basically private cloud. So I'm in the public cloud, essentially partner with these hyperscalers. Why not? So now essentially how to, I mean, so now, yeah, exactly. So how we sell, right? How to go to the market, right? That's exactly. So, I mean, right now in general, in the States, right? Living in India based, right? But I guess it's kind of general trend global wise. So its business is a little bit slower, right? People talking recession, why not? But I can feel that like the past 2 or 3 years has been crazy. 100% on the job projects. That's exactly yesterday I'm touching base with. And this year we can tell it's slowed down.
Mm.
So now, I mean, business-wise, we have to grow, we have to scale, right? That's the topic of this conversation as well. How to scale your business
Yeah.
one way or another. So everybody have to be, you know, approach the sale, involved in the sales process. That's exactly. So how then we call it value proposal, right? We call it, you know, it's customer first and cloud first. So how you value proposal of your solution, basically we call it our offering solution, right? How do we convince that? So you bring up this skill actually before this conversation, I actually think, hey, this is skill, this is very good, very good. I mean, it's a keyword, right? You can
Yeah.
look at it from different, you know, perspectives. So now scale, right? How to scale it, right? So you're talking about the business, right? Essentially how to sell it, scale the sale process. So yeah, so though I see a lot of companies, right, across the board, different shape, right? So we have enterprise, you know, medium size and a lot of startup for sure. So what I see is, I mean, like you said, some companies already, you know, they have different maturity, right? They have different journey about ML AI. So some companies, yeah, it's already POC, right? Sometimes you just data scientist is a pure conventional data scientist, just doing everything in notebook, right? They never even
Yeah.
see deployment yet, and not even, you know, work with the cloud technology yet. So it's everything's local. And I do have enterprise customers, right? For example, they basically have a, you know, whole army of team, right? They basically leverage open source technology, which is good, right? Basically, but they basically it's open source. That means they manage all the services, the infrastructure, why not in-house? So it's a lot of work, batch work, right? So that's why essentially they basically have to shift one of the hyperscalers because all of a sudden, right, that dredge work is gone, right? Basically, it's adopting to AWS term, right? It's undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? For example, Kubernetes, right? If you shift to one of the hyperscalers, all of a sudden your DevOps don't have to worry about all those patch updates, server maintain, all that because everything is managed. So now that part of work is gone, right? It's undifferentiated heavy lifting. Now the DevOps, you really can focus on, what's for your basic CI/CD and work with, the data science team and the basic problem domains, right? And domain experts, why not? So that's basically essentially now, right? I provide a lot of context, right? So with that being said, how do you sell, right? How do you scale this pipeline, right? So how value proposing. So for us, we are model factory, right? So essentially regarding, your business case, right? Organizing structure. So our platform is wide open, right? So our model factory is it's a pattern, right? So basically end of the day, it's a software, right? It's a software enabled. So it's a pattern, right? Software pattern, but we kind of shift to the for the ML pattern. So end-to-end solution. So that means we are technology agnostic. With that being said, regardless, what cloud flavor, what technology you are bringing, right? Because down the chain, right, the stack, whatever stack you have, right, from IEC, CI/CD stack, and basically even the data side, right? Basically, whatever platform, whatever stack you have, basically all model factory, we can custom design. All pattern can be custom designed, very easy designed for your specific organization, specific technical requirement, non-technical requirements. Because different components we can, depends on organization structure, team boundary, we can assign eventually that's a code base, right? The code base ownership, which part go to which, and also between the handoff, we want to make sure everything is automated and with minimum human basically communication as possible. That's kind of automation. That's a beauty part of it. So that's how we sell our solution. So we don't have any technology lock-in, don't have any vendor lock-in, and don't have any team structure lock-in. Everything is adapted to your own needs, and we can do it fast and cheap. That's how you sell your solution, right?
Yeah, and
Xiaoze, I'm sorry, I provide you a lot of context. I saw the context is very important, how we set up the boundary, otherwise kind of wondering what's going
no,
on
absolutely, that's correct.
here.
And I kind of agree with that because the kind of like you're saying there are a lot many providers out there in the market, and it's kind of flurry. You don't know which one to pick, and when you mentioned the concept of vendor lock-in, I absolutely agree with that because when you're about to make a decision, you may not have enough information to know, and you still need to take an action. But as you proceed, and you might be feeling that this is not maybe which is optimizing your value chain, then that's the time when you're stuck, and there's a lot of migration issues which then bring the risk that comes with changing the vendor. So I agree with that. And somewhere when you mentioned that it is technology agnostic, so what I want to know is that all those vendors that you're saying because of which you become there is no vendor lock-in, right? So is there a reverse or maybe bi-directional compatibility, like you can get it attached with any of the service provider, any of the vendor, any of the tech stack it is compatible with? So how do you achieve that?
Yeah, that's again basically we essentially, I can see the conversation we're getting deeper. Thanks for all that conversation. I believe I always call it brain trust, right? Because essentially our thought process is converging, is right. That's essentially I'm customer facing, right? That's why very beginning I have to either educate brainstorming with a client, so that I can make sure the team, right, our thought process is heading to the same direction. That's how we converge. Otherwise it's very difficult, right? Because the later on implementation is going to be a headache. So that's very important. So yeah, back to this thread, right? The thought process. Yeah. So how do we convert that? Yeah, you are essentially our solution is, so that's back to my company, right? Rackspace. Our biggest slow is we are multi-cloud. So essentially, all the vendors there, and even our own private cloud solutions, right? Because for some sort of segments, right, our industry, financial, healthcare, that data is,
Yes.
you cannot go to the public cloud. So basically, you somehow you still have to work with your own data center, right?
Yeah.
So we basically that's our private cloud solution. We have that manage a private cloud solution. It's software defined. It's very cool. So essentially, so this is a word, right, regarding cloud technology, right? So multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, that's the current theme right now. So because one way or another, because even for public cloud adoption solution, one way or another, so at some point when you scale your business, some point you realize the public cloud pricing model is not facing your big business. If you look at all the SaaS startup, right, if you analyze the revenue, right, I mean, one extreme, because half the cost, 50% of the cost is really go to the cloud platform cost. That's why you still have to, somehow you have to manage that cost piece. So somehow you still have to scale down public cloud adoption and somehow set up your own basically managed private cloud solution. And I believe there are a lot of success stories there, basically how they achieve the top line, right? Basically the top line and basically the margins. So with that being said, multi-cloud and hybrid cloud, that's a theme. And now back to our multi-factor ML solution, right? Essentially, how do we adapt that? So that's exactly, I'm keeping telling that we try our best design our solution as open as possible. With that means every piece, every component, every stack is, and even every team component is open. It's plug in and plug back, right? Basically, you have somehow technology for that piece of technology. For example, IEC language, right? For example, AWS. You start from CloudFormation, spin up the IEC, right? Infrastructure as code, spin up the resources. Somehow, AWS is pushing CDK, right? So somehow you want to shift that to CDK. Basically we can easily change that. That's how we trying to design our basically multi-factor or solution often as open as possible. Basically part of the solution is really future proof, right? Because the whole ecosystem is changing so fast. MLOps, right? It's more ahead a bit, but for general AI, it just started, but it's exponential. It's flooding, right? Like you said, it's developed speed, right? It's changing so fast. So that's why we have to adopt, but we have most factors have different version. Right now we call it version 3, but very beginning, right? That the ecosystem now there and the framework is there. I mean, right now, so even our own framework, right? How we structure a project, we have different flavors. But again, it depends your own specific situation. We have that pattern for you.
Yeah. And I think right now, because as we are working on a lot of models and we are thinking of productionizing them, maintaining ML models, I think is a scary thing for everyone who has touched the model, right? So how do you see that it's still giving the right predictions, doing the error analysis, seeing whenever there is a need for retraining, monitoring it, when some outage happens, how do you debug that? And then this whole entire workflow that goes back into the beginning. So it's very difficult to maintain a model, not knowing where the error might be coming from, because it could be from the data side, it could be some genuine software issue, the code is not working right. So when you think of the ML ops as a space, what would you recommend to the clients? Is it like you also some point mentioned about open source? So is it like you recommend them to have in certain industries a DIY solution, do it yourself, or there is a way that you would suggest them to use some of the off-the-shelf available in the market solutions for ML ops?
Yeah, again, thanks for this question. It's so good. Yeah, that's essentially, internally we have working on this piece a lot.
Okay.
I actually check your background before I came in, right? You actually work with staff design with Walmart Group Tech. I'm like, wow, Vindy is going to be challenge me, right? That's why I have to be calm down, make sure I'm not nervous because hard question is coming.
No, we are just discussing. No point.
So I'm prepared mentally. So, but again, now, this is serious. This is exactly a very good question. So now if I can wrap it up, right, to kind of summarize your question, this is essentially called observability, right? I mean, I'm just use observability not only because ML, right? Because you probably heard all kinds of word before observability, right? Infrastructure observability, app observability, right? Because everything from that's traditional software industry So now you probably heard about data observability, right? About data quality advantage one that, and ML observability, right? I believe later on AI, general AI, it's coming, I'm sure. But end of the day, right? That's why it's a lot of noise, right? But if you really come down and see through the thread there, it's end of the day just one thread, right? Because end of the day, why we doing data science ML is data-driven decision, right? The reason you need observability because you want it's data-driven decision instead of like gut feeling, right? Because right, old days you really don't have that data, right? That's why it's people call it telemetry, right? There are all kind of open source and framework solution is there. It's very very good ecosystem there. The reason for that is because end of the day, it's called instrumentation, right? Even every piece is just like a hardware, right? So just like you have a oil gas well, right, down the ground, right? It's all pump hardware, but attach that pump, right? But you have a sensor, right? Just like your Apple Watch, for example, even your phone, right? The sensor is everywhere. So the reason for that, every piece of your code is going to be censored, instrumented, right? Because it's logging, right? Specifically.
Yeah.
So that's basically how you collect data, right? Once you have that data, man, that's good, right? Down the hill, right? That's basically how you master that data. That's essentially data ops, right? That's why. So we essentially, I design this, assign this observability to end of the day is just instrumentation, right? Basically, how you instrument. There are a lot of tooling selection there. Definitely, the end of the day is part of your core ML, whatever or core app code base, right? You just have additional layer instrumentation, right? Think about the right like car, right? All the traditional cars, right? You don't have any instrumentation sensing. Why not? Think about right now, for example, Tesla, right? All of a sudden, it's not a car anymore. It's a computer. Why is computer? Because it has so many sensors and so many, silicons, right? For example, right? So it can do computing, sensing, data collecting, massage, everything, the whole loop, right? It's a smart thing, right? People talk about smart car, and we talk about we call it a smart factory, right? In genetic term, right? Real smart factory, additive manufacturing. Now counting on more model factory MLs, it's smart, That's so right. So now let me continue zoom. That's a high, level, right? Grounded. So now let's zoom in on this MLs observability, right? So exactly, we call it monitoring. It's not exactly monitoring. We're trying to do active, like you said. How do you do the model readiness? So now why is this piece? And because why your model gets stale, right? Because dynamic change, right? ML it's just like foundation ML. It's not true physics, right? It's not based on hard science because everything you just feed the data, right? That's why people talking generative AI like model can get hallucination because right? They don't see a lot of data, right? As long as they see the history behavior, they can summarize that trend. Otherwise, they still kind of dumb, right? Suppose that's why you still have to do fine tuning, use your own domain data. That's why you have, full GPT, by GPT, all kinds of GPT, right? So anyway, that's a different trend. So now back to this ML. So why we need to get this data, right? So this piece is we call it basically online serving, right? Essentially, there are different deployment patterns, right? You have batch, even batch we're still trying to instrument, but the main thing is just like it's online because, for example, everything is online, right? Recommendation engine, right? For example, TikTok, right? For example. So their algorithm is so damn good. Why? Because the whole loop, their instrumentation observability is super good. Because everything is online, because models keep retraining and always use the fresh data, right? Latest data instead of batch, right? So now we are in, by the way, I just want to chime in, there are so many deployment strategies, right? So deployment patterns, right? Beyond this online, there are batch, and you have different logic and different, pipeline deployments, business logic deployment, but let's focus on this monitor, very important, is really online serving, right? So online serving, how do you keep your model kind of fresh instead of stale, right? How do you make sure basically your retraining mechanism, right? In order to do this, actually, I'm going to chop in some, there's so many, great minds in the ecosystem, right? Like Chip Wing, right? They basically write a book, right? Design machine learning system. And here he actually got the startup. So That's so terminology
Yes.
is a basically continue learning. I'm not sure you read her book, but continue reading, learning, right? So the reason be that it's basically it's streaming technology in real time, uh, because technology now infrastructure was not there. So end of the day, it's data collection. As I said, it's data ops, right? So that's
Yeah.
why essentially basically shift the whole stack concept to the left. So not only MLs and the data ops. So that's why I see the whole. I mean, we actually have a data team, right? Data engineer team, right? The whole data ops ML stream is essentially blurred, right? That's why you have different,
Yes.
titles. Why not? But at the end of the day, I will see it's because data ops start from your transaction data, right? That's where your data source from transaction database. Then people have data lake, lake house, then data
Yeah.
mesh, right? I'm trying to merge the whole, the concept there, buzzwords there. But at the end of the day, monitor is really data ops because you have to collect the data, then store it, then serve it, right? That's we are talking about the serving, right? You
Yeah.
want to serve fresh data, and you want to serve your model is fresh data. So it's really data side and the model side. But like you said, we do have the infrastructure issues, but assume that piece is basically getting more mature, right? Because that's from the software side. So it's really from the data side and model side. So, but now, right, think about how do you update those two, right? Most likely, right, for one specific use case, your model or your algorithm relative scale, but you do have different dynamic selection scenario there. But let's assume, just keep it simple, right? So relatively, your algorithm model is basically really easy. You just have to do retraining. So how do you do retraining, right? Because your data changes, right? How do you now you see the boundary reaction, right? There's a trigger here, right? How do you decide you retraining, right? Then you have different criteria, right? The triggers, right? Or you can doing just like typical batch schedule cron job, right? Every minute,
Yeah.
right? That's why there's a continual learning, right? It's just keep learning, right? Whenever you have new data there, you don't have this batch skill cron job or even triggering, right? That's why you still have a different trigger mechanism there. But at the end of the goal, just like Chip Win, basically her book is saying, I believe as her startup is doing, basically end of the day, you don't have all those different categories. Just whenever
Yes.
you have data, that go ahead and retrain. And that's the way basically you always have good. But in order to make that happen, this is an infrastructure issue instead of data science, it's a science issue or essentially engineer problem versus science problem.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I kind of agree when you mentioned that it's a problem about observability. And I think it's going to be a big trend, and it's already something that we all are in need of. Like earlier, it used to happen, you pipe the data in, and there are a lot of transformations, data integration, collection, everything that you do on the data before feeding it to the algorithm. And then you come up with the model, which is finally the serving model in the production. But what happens is, right from the time you give the data in and the time you get the predictions out, the entire thing is almost black box for somebody who doesn't know ML, or maybe for the engineers themselves or the developers who are building the pipeline as well. Um, Partially because the nature of the algorithm is mostly black box. But how far do you think are we still in terms of observability that we can actually see how the data is changing shape and form, and how we in fact are arriving at the final predictions, which takes me back to the question that I originally asked in the beginning as well, that adoption becomes easy if you are able to trust the outcome and you don't know how it's tracing back. So somebody who is just seeing the prediction and is supposed to act on it, right? The prediction is of no use if nobody's acting on top of it, right? So
Exactly.
how would somebody act on it? Now that person needs to trace it back to what change in the pipeline would have happened that I might have gotten some different output, right? So how would I know that this is the right thing? It's more about the confidence, the question of being confident in the action that I'm going to take based on this result. So how do you relate it with the observability, and how mature are we in this space?
Yeah. Again, that's super great question. Yeah. So observe right. You actually can talk this. I believe this is different topics you kind of touch on. So right, you talk about let me how I thread the needle, right? Basically, essentially, you talk about black box, right? I mean, observability, the whole thing just give you transparent about the system, right? This ML
Yes.
system give you observability, right? You want to see inside the. That's why you call this is one black box. The whole system is black box. So you want to see through it, right? But like you said, so now if you want to, I call it debugging, right? Basically, what's the issue coming from, right? I call it basically is traceability or
Yeah.
lineage, right? So now really back to the the core of the question, right? How the system, the way I observe it, right? The ecosystem is still kind of early. But all of a sudden, because general AI is coming, right? Everything is kind of, everybody is hyped to that side. But this side, I believe still a lot of people are really, on the ground do real work and trying to push through, right? Things just a little bit, right? It takes time, effort. The way I say it, I mean, our mode factor, we have a monitor, big piece, right? We call it placeholder, it's monitoring, but we don't have it for the sake of lack of the word, right? It's not a right word, but just put there because instrumentation, just like a car, right? We still have so many legacy cars. I mean, all of a sudden you have new fancy cars coming. So the change takes time, right? You can basically instrument the old cars, but the whole point is we try to do everything native, right, from the very beginning. So the whole monitor piece instrumented, it's the way that's, to be honest, that's kind of a lot of focus. My focus is monitoring because our offerings still have to evolve. And the other side is generative AI, right? So that takes away a lot of my my time for sure. So that's why monitor is a big placeholder for our patents there. So now that's my experience observation there. Just for quick feedback to your question. Yeah, it's still early. But so now let's go back another black box, right? So you are talking about the black box, right? Because typically we call blacks because model, right? That's another topic, right? Explainability, right? That's also big box, right? Responsible AI, for example, right? So explainability, right? So now all of a sudden we're trying to, be transparent about ML system. Now, how about the core of it? How about model, right? Because all of a sudden machine trying to, I mean, people are biased, right? But machine trying to, it's in the decision making, right? How do your judgment call, right? Just like, go to the court, right? The judge makes the call, right? I mean, if you look at the human bias, there are so many, several hundred bias, right? If you studied even human bias, then how do you make sure your black box algorithm-wise is not biased, right? End of the day, right? Observe, monitoring, not only data quality, but the bias is also there, right? Even you have the best massage feature engineer data, right? About the feature store, why not? Basically, it's about managing your model data is always fresh, but still that's not enough, right? Because you still have that basically, that's another part of black box response AI, right? You have to make sure, I mean, it's all the data is pretty much interaction data, right? Because the human machine interaction or website click, for example, is human by itself is input to your brain, right? Or animal. It's super biased, right? The data, behavior data is biased. How about your model, right? So, right, obvious is going to be biased. And because that's exactly why you have to change your model, because people behavior change. People by our nature is an evolving system, right? Brain evolve because it's changing, right? But today you are on this mode, and next day you are on totally different mood, right? Then your click behavior changes. Well, then your model doesn't work yesterday, today, right? So that's the nature of it, right? So end of the day, everything changed, right? It's just, it's basically it's a fickle animal, right? It's I mean, that's the nature of it, right? How do you catch up, right? So it's tough, it's a challenge. So, but end of the day, that's why I always back to human side. So instead of make decision based on emotion or current mood, so we need to provide some sort of principle, right? Although it's not perfect, but at least we have some high level guidance principle, so that okay, that's our principle, that's how we approach things, that's how we operate. That's the way we can design, assign our pattern of software design. Why not? Otherwise, it's all over the place. So let me stop right there.
No, absolutely. And I agree that this is a twofold problem. Like you correctly mentioned, that observability, largely when we use the term, it's about having a visibility into your pipeline, where ML module is definitely one of the component, and assuming that you have the best model deployed, which when you tested it offline is performing best, just in case if you have that model, right? Now, the model itself, if fed the right data, is going to give you the accurate prediction. Now, the problem is that if you get something inaccurate, it becomes a problem of observability, because you don't know, and you're not, like you mentioned the word traceability, you're not able to trace it, whether it's really a quote unquote model problem, that the data behavior itself, inherently the distribution is changing, or is it something that's gone wrong in the pipeline that the pipeline, there's this data transformation that didn't really work well, or there is some missing piece, or there's some error that happened in the whole workflow. So that's where it becomes important to have an observability just beyond the ML algorithm as well, because algorithm might be still doing at it might be at its best. It's just that the data, the unseen data, which is getting massaged and processed before it's being fed to it, is still not able to give the right prediction. So that becomes a multi-fold problem. Already the model is probabilistic, and then it cannot perform best all the time. And on top of that, you have some unseen issues and outages that can take your predictions for a toss. So when you put those things together, it becomes like, highly uncertain about how and when can I trust the outcome.
Yeah. So I just want to add that. Yeah, I feel like I missed that piece, but somehow you make it up. That's very good. That's exactly, I agree. That's basically two-way approach, right, to address the issues, right? That's exactly, I would call it one way is proactive and one way is reactive. But so one way is proactive is just like maintain our health, right? You have to be proactive instrumentation. I mean, like you said, observability tracing, right? Like you said, which part is a problem, right? That's to be specific observability, right? So typically, it's inside different your system components, right? Basically, you have data side, model side, and basically the infrastructure side, right, or CI/CD side, the pipeline side, called the infrastructure. So typically, observability specifically, right? You probably heard about the dashboard, right? So basically, different components. So you trying to do the instrumentation, right? That's kind of passive way, right? It's monitoring, right? Basically, you try to log in different parts of the data feed into a dashboard. You have different places. That's the way you can make always, we call it a modularity, right? Component, because every component is a plugin independent, right? That's the way basically, okay, like you said, we have a problem, right? Like a prediction, we don't know it's way off, right? Because all users are gone, right? Behavior changes. So what happened, right? So all of a sudden, what happened? This is a business problem, not technical. All of a sudden, hey, suppose it's a technical problem and system. Now let's come back. Okay, then you go to your dashboard, for example. So then basically you can, infrastructure is good, dashboard is showing everything is green, which is good. Then you kind of keep shifting. That's the way basically how you basically trace down, right? Because as I said, essentially it's a pretty simple with decision making and component modular. Why not? It's essentially it's the same thread, right? You don't have any thread, right? All over the place. And the other approach, like basically is proactive, right? Instrument or validation, right? You have instrument which is good collecting data of inside into the system. Now the other way is basically you probably hear about is you always do validation. It's right, a quality control, right? Just like the manufacturer line, right? So you don't you have people quality check right now. People are trying to automate machine learning to quality control, right? And now, for example, data validation, right? Because before your data, the whole, either for training or scoring phase, your whole processing pipeline, you need some sort of validation mechanism. Then for your model side, right, you need some sort of quality control. Basically, you need a very sophisticated evaluation service. That's essentially, like you said, monitor and retraining. That's essentially evaluation service. That's a whole independent instrumentation. Make sure, hey, even I update the model, right? What's your new model essentially actually was compared to old model, right? So how do you do the evaluation service? Make sure, regardless, right? You need some sort of decision. I need to deploy the right model instead of always, the latest model for that way. So yeah, that's two way. Essentially, I just repeated what you are saying.
No, I absolutely agree with it. And when you're mentioning, right, there are multiple components in every the health, for example, the health profile of each of the component needs to be very strong to make sure that it's alignment, because everything is so tightly coupled. You want to make sure that the problem or the bug at one of the component is not impacting anything which is downstream to it. Now, when we have a lot of offerings, for example, in the MLOps space, when we spoke in the beginning of the conversation, the space is very crowded and it's getting crowdier day by day, right? For example, how do you, what are the key factors and criterias for you to, evaluate which particular service or the offering or the vendor should you pick as compared to the other one? It could be pricing as an issue. I know that developer productivity, how easy it is to integrate into the current systems, and what is the customer service support. these are some of the factors that I already know of, but I would like to hear from you because you're very expert in this space. That what is the lens of systemic design, that pros and cons of choosing one over the other? How do you do that evaluation?
Yeah. Again, this question is very personal to me actually.
Okay.
To be honest, this is another level. Yeah, we are very active. Not myself and basically, or the whole team internally here. Don't want to put too much there, but yeah. So yeah, you are right. So let me actually have a plug-in, right? I'm not sure the audience, your podcast, but I just plug in just in case people don't know. You probably heard of the Mad Landscape, right? It's every year released by Matt, but his last name. So it's a Mad Landscape. I can share that later.
Okay.
With that being said, so the Mad, what's a Mad? It's Mad essentially. Mad is ML. What is AI? D is data, right? The Mad landscape. So for this year's map, it's how many logos there? I believe it's close to 1,500 logos.
Okay.
Including all the hyperscaler, AWS, Google, for OpenAI, down to a lot of startups. The whole, that's the ecosystem, but it's not completed, right? It's no way. So with that being said, so yeah, let's forget the whole ecosystem. And I believe if you have there's another map called generative AI landscape, the whole VC ecosystem. It's crazy for sure. And so now, and you also read a lot of articles, right? ML tooling, right? I believe Chip Win, she has the right article, ML ops tooling ecosystem, so many tools. It's all over the place. I mean, that's probably exactly why our beloved customer finally makes basically take a leap of their face and trust us, and as a trusted advisor, help them design the solution and implement it. Hopefully they are happy, but we try our best. So now you're exactly right. It's all over the place. How do you select it, right? I mean, we cannot, like Amazon, we develop a recommending engine.
Yes.
Very sorry, if you do a click button, you need to take this one, right? This is not like a product Amazon shop, right? You have for each category of item, you have so many vendors, different flavors, different color shapes, right? That's a recommendation engine. But I mean, we literally serve as a human recommendation trusted advisor, right? I mean, how we do that? I mean, human brain is limited, but has its own beauty compared. I mean, how we do that? We just thread it. We categorize everything. We don't have, we categorize. I mean, that people are talking about data catalog, model catalog, I mean, whatever catalog. I mean, even, right, people talking search like Google and ChatGPT. It's categorized, right? I mean, even AI is a painting, right? It's category. So it's catalog, right? That's how we do it, abstract level, right? Some people call it abstract tools, right? So you want to abstract all that, detail for each implementation. It's its own, basically engineering technically, right? Implementing its own specifics, right? I mean, as a user, right, you don't want to worry about all that details, right? You abstract that way, abstract the tools, right? So, I kind of lost our thread. What are we talking here today? This thread, we are talking about the ecosystem.
The comparison.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
So let's be, how do you, I mean, it's called ML, it's tooling, right? There's so many there. That's a very good question. So our multi-factor solution, right? Specifically, we are technology agnostic, right? But for every component, right? For each component, there is a different flavor, right? Just like you talk about programming, right? They assign it, right? We work with a class, right? And for each class, you have an instance, right? Class, you have a realization, right? Just for example, right? You have a fruit, right? So apple is just one of the fruits, right? You have different flavor, high-end flavor, lower. So basically, that's realization, right? Basically, it's end of the day, it's just one class. So how do you do that for every component? That's essentially, you can think about a class, right? A system System, like you said, system design is component for every component. That's why when we design proposal, design diagram, right, we just say, hey, that's a placeholder, right? Don't worry, I
Yeah.
put the it's just a placeholder. Whatever realization
Yes.
or technology stack, right? Don't worry about, hey, don't worry. When we deliver, we'll use your flavor, your choice. For example, I see, right? Some people use Terraform, some use
Yes.
CloudFormation, CDK, why not? But don't worry about that, it's just a placeholder. But point being that is, yeah, we are basically agnostic. So now about the integration, right? Basically, we call it, right, our framework is open, but at the end of the day, all those, cloud hyperscale, they are back end, right? Think about that, right? For
Yeah.
example, simple traditional software, right? All we care is developer experience, user experience, and basically efficiency and business impact value, right? We want to streamline, scale your workflow. You talk about scale here today. I mean, we can talk about the load scaling, right? It's pretty much it's managed right now. It's dynamic load management, but we can talk about, we can scaling your model, right? If you have 10 model, 100 model, that's exactly the beauty of us. We help you scale, manage your model, and also how do we scale not only model itself, it's a process, right? Basically, the way you work is scary, right? Because I bet you want to go to market fast, right? And
Yes.
you are still stuck with the POC notebook. But my point is, yeah, you don't want, I want you, hey, you got idea, develop one of your concept algorithm. I want you quickly, boom, just go see, test, right? Kind of POC, you deploy a model and do an inference scoring to test your idea, and it is super fast. That's basically, we want to end of basically fast iteration, right? If people talk about startup, everything, that's the nature of iteration, because the nature of the business, because so dynamic, you want an iteration fast. That's the way you can always go, right? Go to the core of the issue,
Yes.
whatever issue fast. That's how we scale. That's why I said technically, right? Load balance scaling and the model scaling, data scaling, that's all technical. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm always saying, oh, the way I say the scale, more important is we want to scaling your process, because the process is a people, it's dynamic, right? Because you don't want to, hey, have that grace area, because data scientists don't even talk with DevOps guy, whatever, the
Yeah.
internal dynamics. I mean, end of the day, we develop our platform, we can divide the component according to your, we can map that to your organized structure, but most likely we still have act with trusted advisor to, we want to do the organizational change, not only technology change.
Yes.
But end of the day, yeah, you see what I'm saying? We are doing high level trusted advisor, not only technical, but people side dynamic. We'll have to design that. But end of the day, I mean, it's a group of people of entity, right? You have their own preferred organization structure. We can map that to your own dynamics. And we want to make sure the hands off it's just a pull request, something like that, automated, so that you don't have that friction, because every time human communication, you're gonna have friction. So
Yes.
make it happy experience, right? So basically happy people, happy
Yeah.
results, right? That's winning team regardless how you divide and boundary it. So
Yeah.
so
And
now let me chime into the one more question. Maybe back to you. I talk about ecosystem integration, right? I do have additional parts, but back to you first.
no, I think you correctly mentioned. And would you consider that as part of being tech sticky? Like there's a tech stickiness for each of the client, and then you have to make sure that you adhere to that and still provide the solution based on what that particular organization or business needs. Because again, the people component comes into the picture where they need to be very comfortable with whatever change you're introducing, and you want to make sure that that's the path of least resistance for them.
Yeah. So that's why a lot of time you have to work with this, high level, if not CEO
Yeah.
level sponsor, right? You have to sponsor the change. That's the way you have got enough attention. Otherwise, well, talk is cheap, right? Then people back to their normal, kind of back
Yes.
to, it's business, like a business normal, right? Business euro, right? Oh, it's a habit, right? Because it's a habit, right? The older way
Yes.
of doing things instead of that's the right way. I don't want to say that new dynamic means is the right way, but always provide that's the right way. The hint is you want those things fast and right. and good, right? So now, yeah, let me turn then back into the we talk about landscape, right? The mad landscape, right? So many ecosystems there. How do you basically advise the solution, right? How do you solve the solution as a trusted advisor and solution architect? So what I say is essentially, we don't want to, do an integration hell. End of the day, we are open, but end of the day, it's all about integrations, right? Offering we design is beauty of integration. But we don't want to have an integration hell, but you believe there are a lot of stories there. I don't want to point out the good, bad, ugly there. But the point is, there are a lot of stories. I definitely know that. So end of the day, it's integration, right? I mean, like you said, so there are so many ecosystem startup, right? Which, trailblazers, but end of the day, they cannot address everything. But maybe, they have SageMaker, Google, right? Android, these guys have organizing, they have enough brains, right, hands to address all-inclusive platform. But I don't think they can handle everything, because no, my point is, yeah, there are a lot of components there. I mean, if you categorize each component, you have this type of companies, right? Each have that address the same component or same function separately, right? Some, a lot of startup is their framework is open source, right? I tend to, have a lean to this type of company because they have open source framework. But a lot of vendors, they are locked, right? They closed source system. You basically essentially black box, right? Just back to good old software, right? You just present a UI, and all they said their thing is proprietary. You don't know anything. I typically don't want to integrate this type because you don't know anything, right? Because I mean, that's why I try to address the ecosystem, right? Their framework, their sort of thinking, their design is open source framework. At least, although they have a manager project, which is good, but at least their design. Do you have that code? And that's where basically that's where you basically essentially integration, right? It's a code building tree. That's way how you can. I mean, code is a language, right? So just like right now we are talking, but at the end of the day, software, you are writing things. Although you are different, but somehow you are writing some. We have to. I mean, just like you have your thesis, I have my thesis. Somehow, I mean, you have a different topic, or maybe we are writing the same thing, but somehow we wanna, let all theses talk together, basically make it powerful, right? So somehow you have to do that integration. So that's the way I say it. Yeah, it's a lot of vendors there. But somehow my clients came in, hey, I have preference for this vendor or this framework because they already tested it. And sometimes they just heard about it because they don't have any experience. They don't even know it. They just heard about it because everybody talking it, right? So with that being case, so how do you address it, right? I mean, unless clients have very strong preference, because they just heard friends, families, so many convincing stories because come the emotional attachment. Well, if you really want to try them, but because sometimes we don't even have that experience, right? Because so many tools, you don't necessarily have hands-on from which it's impossible.
I agree.
So how do we approach this dynamic, right? So the way I said that, if you really like it, let's do a POC quickly. All right, just do a POC. Let's quickly spend some time. Let's give us feedback. What's our experience? Develop experience of using how that affects all the way we deliver things, deliver products. How that affects that, right? Compare, for example, more robot tested solution we proposing. So just compare, right? Then we make a call, because once you go through that process, I mean, your gut feeling, that's where the experience coming, right? You develop user experience. I mean, the decision it's obvious, right? That's why I just, let's compare it. And, end of the day, it's easy call, right?
And thank you, Xiaoze, first of all, for giving such an exhaustive answer, because I agree that, there is no one word answer for any of these questions. In fact, anything that you see is related to an AI/ML workflow, everything is very iterative. You do it, you get your hands dirty, experience it, then you feel that that's not correct, and then you kind of course correct everything. You bring that lens. Okay, last time when I, like you're saying, for everything you need to do a POC. There is no, and unless you do it a number of times, like you mentioned, these are the experiences that get counted, and then you start becoming a little picky about, okay, I've tried this, and I know that historically, empirically, it has worked well for so many customers and all, and I know that this is a mature stack enough that we can adopt it. But there's so many permutation combinations that come from all those vendors for each of the components that it becomes too difficult to try every bit of it to know what works best for your customer. So it's again, like I think a lot of hit and trial initially, but yeah, learning from the experiences.
Yeah. So that's a very good summary. There. So now I want to actually add another layer on that, right? It's kind of right. People talk about layer approach, right?
Yeah.
Layer is the way I see the abstract, right? So the way I say it, end of the day, right? This, I mean, the way is this is a social problem, right? Essentially, end of the day, right? So we want a pragmatic, we're problem solving, right? Because every client organization, they have a mission call, right? Mission call, but everything is business driven, right? It's making money for sure. But end of the day, you want to serve your client, right? So because client is paying for your service, so we want to be pragmatic. What does that mean,
Yes.
right? So I mean, like you said, there are different combinations. I mean, the way to be honest, I'm super promising about a future because the whole ecosystem is blooming. It's so many good people doing good things for sure. I'm not bad at all. I mean, so, no, my point is basically there are so many ways of doing things, to be honest with you. Like you said, so many ways to solve one problem. Yeah, that's for sure. Different combinations. So now in the days, the way we try to trust the advisor is with our big experience and a little bit biased sometimes, but it's really trying to be pragmatic, help you solve your problem the most efficient way, right? So when you sell property, it's good, cheap, and fast, right?
Yeah.
Most likely, if you hit two of it, that's awesome. If you hit all three, that's a perfect solution, or perfect offering, right? So that's why most likely, right, we try to address two of the three. That's good. That's good. That's pragmatic enough. Because end of the day, you have to move on. Life is changing so fast. You have to make a kind of move on. Maybe this solution is, I mean, shared life is not that great, but I mean, because nature of the business, right? You got startup, you have your Series A funding, but for this stage of funding, you have a solution going on. You don't worry about this stuff. Artificial heavy lifting, you address your business side, then you evolving. Maybe for next stage, it changes, right? That's exactly we try to be pragmatic. We try not trying to be for the sake of perfect. And that life is never going to be perfect, and this thing is so dynamic. But end of the day, we're trying to solve human level. It's pragmatic issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
I think
the way I say it. Yeah.
I think being pragmatic is a true word here, because everywhere in the whole ecosystem or the framework that we design, we are continuously making trade-off choices. And these trade-offs are what, based on which we need to effectively go and take a call without having the luxury of trying everything and, everything possible, because that's, I think, practically not feasible. So, I think, with this, Xiaoze, we've come towards the end of the show. But before I let you go, I have one last question. We started at a very lighter tone, and I
Awesome.
want just
Did we finish all your question list? If you have
oh
one, just
yeah.
I
So
usually like a taste about timing, right? I just want to kind of have a gauge how it goes.
yeah, I do. And I had a kind of, it's all of those questions, they kind of came from our previous conversation, what we were thinking, and then trying to make sure that I ask those questions which the audience might be feeling like asking you, and I have to wear the lens of an audience and then pose those questions to you. But yes, all the questions that I had open-ended in this conversation are being answered. Thank you for that.
Oh, good.
And
That's great feedback in my model updates. See, that's how you continue learning, right? This is a model. You see, that's quick feedback. I mean, that's exactly model modules, right? If you don't have quick feedback, because sometimes people don't click on it. I mean, for example, some cases, right? You have an insurance agent, right? You have an insurance producer. If you say it, I mean, client won't tell you that's good or bad because you don't have that feedback, right? Because the feedback loop is so long, it's never going to be happy, right? That's a feedback loop, basically. That's another basically general AI, right? Basically problem engineer, right? Reinforcement learning from human feedback, right? That's essentially how you improve the system, but thanks for the positive feedback. And that's good experience for both of us. We're trying to nail it.
Yeah, definitely. I think be it machine or humans, we all kind of grow by feedback. We improve by feedback. So yeah, it goes alike. And as we have come towards the end of the show, I just would like to ask you one final question, which is, what are the top skills that you would recommend someone to possess in order to become an experienced AI/ML architect? The role that you play.
This is definitely because internally I have to lead a team, right? Coaching and teaching my team, especially regarding delivery, right? It's I mean in general this is a tough question, right? It's just because things change so fast. I mean, for example, right? I mean, recommend one framework for you or one stack, right? It
Yeah.
might be quickly out of flavor, right? Either social style, a technical limitation or not. It can be changed so fast. So my point is just the way instead of recommend a specific skill set, right? It's hard, right? That's always I'm saying technically is easy. People side is tough. So just with this, that's why I came out. You have to have the right mindset, right? So if you want to I always recommend book, right? First read that book. Recommend that's called mindset, right? Because there's a growth mindset and basically it's fixed mindset, right? So the way for it's supposed to be right. The human being is evolving just like society, and the society is much slower because people is very hard to change, right? So end of the day, it's about change, adapting, right? So you have to right adapt. Even myself, right? I don't change because I have kids. My daughter said, "Hey, Dad, don't work so hard. Work smarter. Think smarter." I mean, that's exactly right. Learn from everybody. Be open-minded, adapting, and right. I learn from my kids because they are young. They're not saying. I mean, they are not young. They are little because sometimes they're in elementary school, but I still learn from them. What that being said. So just learn from every be open-minded, have a growth mindset, and skill sets will just be open. And the other piece is collaboration, right? Don't just try to do by your own, just leverage minds, hands out there, because everybody learns something. Because end of the day, we all learn from 360 degree, right? You just have your own perspective. Sometimes you have a wide angle, some people have a narrow angle, but it's still one observation because nobody can handle all. So definitely mindset, then collaboration, team sports, and life is team sports, and business definitely sports business, right?
Yeah.
But regarding specifics, I can check that later. But that's just high level. I still believe the high level simple guidance is very important. Once you have a mindset, the know-how, it's very easy.
Yeah, I think that qualifies because the kind of field that we work in, which is technology, everything gets outdated very fast, and there is no one thing that you can latch on to. But I think that having the right mindset, like you mentioned, being very agile, open to learning anything and everything that comes new, and it's such a vast space that, like you mentioned, no one person can deliver or carry off a project all alone. So you need team to do that, and collaboration is a must to handle and work with the team. So yeah, it all ties back together.
Maybe let me one last plugin for the audience. So maybe I actually personally I want to listen, either take this Coursera course or this book. The name of it is Learn How to Learn. I haven't go through it yet, but that's really during last week when I just off the grid, right? Just here and there I check. I noticed this one. It's a book and teach by professor, but there is a Coursera course. You can take the course if you like a video, or you can read the book. The name of it is Learn How to Learn, right? Basically, we're going to be a learning mindset, keep learning, keep growing. So learning how to learn, I haven't go through there. I cannot say much, but I think it's very close to what I'm saying. But I want to go through process because I still have my responsibility. Part of it is really teaching team, coaching team, lead team. Because as I said, at the end of the day, I cannot do it all. Either business or life-wise. So you have to lead, either self-leading or leading others. All right.
All right. So with this, we've come towards the end, and thank you so much, Xiaoze, for taking the time to come to the show. It's been an absolute pleasure discussing all things scale with you. I look forward to meeting with you soon.
Yeah, Vadim, thank you for having me again. It's really great pleasure to talk with you. And as I said, right, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. And again, thanks for the good probing question, right? The soul searching, right? Because unexamined life is not worth living, right? As I said, I keep self-serving, but you ask me good questions. Sometimes prompt question might be wrong, right? It's always bias there. And for the limitation of a language expression, right? It's not perfect, but try your best. I hope you learn something from this conversation. And that's how we pay forward, right? To this world. Again, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, your answers were the best. And, yeah, I, in fact, also learned a lot. And I'm sure the audience will have a lot to learn from this as well. And if I ask you the right questions, I think I did my job right.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I basically give you feedback. So experience-wise, it's awesome. And as I said, soul searching because you hit the core, right? Because that's awesome questions. And I believe this thing is still dynamically developing, and just keep an eye on it. If you really get you hooked on specific topic.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah, thank you.
again, it's all the good questions. I haven't, basically being asked so many in-test questions for a long time because I got asked here and here just once, right? But you ask all the serious questions. It's a good snapshot of where we are right now.
I take it as a compliment.
Thank you for that.